Alright everybody, had a bit of a hiccup, but it looks like we've gotten started now. We're going to be going over the 4 maps that we know of that are in the pool that we saw at DreamHack Atlanta and in the Artosis Super Cup. That's going to be the Broken Crown Hinterlands, Secluded Grove, Jagged Maw, and finally Titan's Causeway. 2 of those maps have been played quite a bit, and 2 of those maps have been played very little, with Titan's Causeway and particularly having cause for us to worry about what's going on with the map and what do people playing in the beta think about it, because it has no games under its belt at all. So rather than go on the about 3-hour first journey that I did yesterday, we're going to have a quick kind of punchy to the point list about what's good and bad about these maps and why you might favor them if you're Infernal or Vanguard. So we're going to go with one of the first maps that we see a lot of play on, and this is Secluded Grove. We can see the maps that have been played over here of the slightly over a dozen maps that we have seen played of Stormgate in some tournament level capacity. Secluded Grove is responsible for over half of them, and there has been an Infernal win on every non-mirror instance. Now, that's the joke as to what's going on right now, but let's think about why, if you're an Infernals player, you might want to play a lot of Secluded Grove. So we're going to go ahead and get this, and this. I want to note that the Secluded Grove has something I want to call the salamander attack. So we're going to use triangles to indicate defensive areas, circles to indicate bases. So the first thing is that let's use the base in the upper right hand side or the northeastern position. Not only do you start here, right? But you probably then want to take this natural in any case. If you're the Infernals player, you have 2 decisions, and both of them are pretty good prospects for you. You can either defend this area and this area. In doing so, you gain access to this as your 3rd base, and this is your 4th base. And the points that you have to defend, which we will then show as in red, would be, pretty manageable. The points you would have to defend realistically are, you would have to worry about someone breaking into the Grove area right here. You have to worry about, obviously, frontal attacks. And then you may have to worry a little bit about attacks that happen in this area that might go through your light forest or break through over here on this side. So all of these, and I'll shade them in a little bit so that you can see, notice how out of the way and rounded out these attack paths are. You either have to come all the way through here if you're the southern player, or you have to wrap back around through the center. So if you do this, you gain access to 1, 2, 3, 4 bases and only 2 points that you realistically have to defend. And the air distance is only really a problem on this ridge right here, right? You have to worry about the bounce back between the main and the possible 3rd base location, but otherwise you're okay. And we see in fact in some games that we're going to analyze later that Parting has an answer for the air concerns that this particular ridge represents. It's an Infernals player, and he puts a Shroud Stone right about here, or the equivalent. Now this is one path that you can take to get 4 bases, but one of the reasons that this map is so particularly good for Infernals is that you don't really have to defend these 2 points right here, because it makes your locus of control, let's take away the attack paths, that makes your locus of control and the things that you have to worry about look something like this, right? You will then have access to this area of the map. The vision camp is something that you will fight over, but this is kind of left out to dry, and you've kind of missed the most important reason that Secluded Grove is so good for Infernals. Now, we know that Veil gives temporary hit points, and Veil is the white health aura, for anyone who doesn't know. We know that gives temporary hit points, roughly equal, in most cases, to 50% of the health of all Infernal units, and so we can actually leverage this. Rather than go to a 1, 2, 3, 4 base economy, and the center being bases 5 and 6, we actually see something more like this happening with Infernals, and I think it makes their game plan much more solid. Think about this. We have our main and our natural, but we can also, instead of taking the base over here, we can defend this point right here, and then this point close to our Therium. Notice how much more narrow of an area this is to control. We can somewhat give up that Luminite or here, and we can say that we just want to have access to the following base right here for the 3rd base. This creates a 1, 2, 3 base area where we don't have to, notice the line, the ground travel path between these bases is pretty close to the air distance between these bases. That means that we can actually defend on ground against air units in a pretty meaningful fashion. And the most important reason that we would do this is that get to engage what I call the salamander, right? And the salamander is as follows. You have control by a proxy of this area, something like this. You'll see why it's called the salamander in a second, right? It's a bit of a googly-eyed mess of a thing, okay? And all you have to worry about, really, is having some way to get access to this secluded grove. The main points that you're going to be attacked by are here, because you would like to get this luminite eventually, and here, but you can put meat farms and shroud stones in that location. It looks like, for a variety of reasons, Infernal players are currently able to get Magmadons faster than the Vanguard players are able to get Vulcans. What this means on this map is that you go from having 1, 2, 3 bases to this being your potential 4 or 5. And I want to note, here's why we get the actual, that image before, right? This is why we call it the salamander, is that you will gain access to this. I want you to notice that the shape that this roughly looks like, right? It's a bit of a googly-eyed, snail-looking, salamander-like thing, okay? See what I'm going for here? This is the area that you can roughly control. And the reason that you're a bit better off at controlling an area is that your static defense as Infernals actually gives you bonus health. And Shroud Stones have an ability where they can use Animus to make their defensive area slightly bigger. Now, once you have access to this area, you go from 1, 2, 3, 4 bases over here. And we'll put a question mark to indicate whether or not that's actually a good idea. Let's put it in yellow so you get it. Is this a good idea? Probably not. You go from this to having access to this. And now you only have one concern. What is my main attack path? And as the Infernal player, this is what you care the most about, and this is why I call it the salamander attack, because once you control this area, you just use your tongue, right? And you just attack this area. Okay? Now, where you go once you attack this area is entirely up to you. You can snake the tongue down and attack like this, or you can take that tongue and then just kind of go around and hit the natural like this. We see examples in multiple games of this happening in both cases. But whether your tongue goes down or around, it's very Orochimaru-esque, shall we say. It's very lizard-like, shall we say. And so we can see why this is a pretty good map for Infernals, right? You only have a couple of points that you have to defend, namely here and here. You do this by putting down Shroud Stones, which you're going to want anyways, and Meat Farms, which you're going to want anyways, and the choke actually makes it very hard for your opponent to do something with the seemingly popular Hedgehog opening. For the same reasons that this is a good map for Infernals, this is a bit of a tricky map for Vanguard. Vanguard have to, in the non-mirror, find some way to stop their opponent from just doing the salamander, from just attacking down this path and taking control of the center. And there's not really great ways on the map to do that, right? You can go out through the side. If you're the Vanguard player, we'll represent them as the people in the south, then your bases look a little more contentious and a little more daring, shall we say. You do get access to your main, you're not too worried about that, and your natural, but except for the creep camps that are located here and here for vision, there's not a whole lot of creep camps that people seem to feel are worth fighting over currently. I mean, yes, the vision is nice. There are obviously some, let's not use circles, let's use squares. Well, there are the creep camps, right, here and here for vision that are considered very important because the vision range of that seems to be something like this over an area. We can see why that would be quite important. Come here, you. Control C and Control V. Really? Okay, fine. While controlling this area is very important because of the vision, the other creep camps don't feel nearly as impactful. Yes, you can attack the creep area that is located here and get temporary extra hit points, but that's sometimes used by fiends just to make sure that they can stay alive. But usually that's a thing that's just kind of cleared out of the way as the Vanguard player is assuming control of this third base, right? And here we've got the creep camp over here. Usually the Vanguard player is doing that while they're assuming control of this third base right here. But the choice of third base is not an easy one for your Vanguard player. So, because they don't stand and deliver against Infernals as well as Infernals do, after all, Infernals have Animus and they benefit from trading down their army, whereas Vanguard typically does not, and a lot of their bonus or benefits are from movement speed. Maps that are highly constricted mean that your movement speed is not as powerful. So, do you take the third base here? If you take the third base here, then your area of control looks something like this, right? You own an area that is roughly like this, okay? And that is actually kind of a problem because you have to worry about attack paths coming over here. So you have to worry about attack paths coming over here, and you have to worry about attack paths coming over here. Neither one of these are particularly good, because if you have a group project, the more people there are, or in this defensive case, the more bases you have to defend, the more of a problem that this represents. So let's say you don't want to take that third base, right? You don't want to spread out like this. Well, there are only a couple of other choices for third base, and they get kind of wonky kind of fast. You can either do something very similar to what the Infernals player is doing. You can say that you want to take this Luminite and the Therium that is accompanying it, right? The Therium here looks a lot safer than the Therium here in this case, and that means that your locus of control, we've seen something very similar to this before, looks something like this, right? And that means the defensive areas that you have to cover mirror what we just talked about in the previous case with Infernals. You have to defend here, and you have to defend here. But I want to note that you don't have very many offbeat, off-kilter attack paths. Air is not very good on this map. If your opponent is pushing forward like this, because of the lines that we've drawn, you can see that the air and ground distance looks very similar. And defending 2 points, the defensive structures that you want to build as Vanguard aren't as good as the ones that already are being built over there by the Infernals, because meat farms and the Fellhogs they generate, or Shroud Stones, which you want to make, are both things that the Infernals player wants to make anyways for Animus. Right? They care about that. They care about its generation. So the choice of third base gets really wonky here for Vanguard very quickly, especially when we see people going for this build hedgehogs and then rush over. So Infernals, on overall and on the whole, Infernals have a very easy game plan on this map. Take these 3 bases, sometimes take this 4th base, and then just attack down this central path, using that as a front to cover taking the center. Vanguard has the difficult choice of whether they go for some 2 base or really wonky, and I do mean really wonky, third base locations, such as the ones that are up here. In fact, we see some games where Vanguard players do go for these kind of more remote third bases and say it's going to be awkward for you to attack down this path if I have a base up here. This does create a lot of problems if you're on the Vanguard side. So if we think of both players at a 10 power level, right, at 10 points of capability to play the game, then I would say that this map doesn't really it kind of benefits the Infernals player. Let's say they go from 10 points to, say, 12. They get some minor advantage, right? 10%, 20% gain on this map. And this is a very awkward map for Vanguard because their game plan of skirmishing and creeping and trying not to take a straight-up fight against Infernals gets very wonky. If we were to close this all the way back out, we can talk about what this looks like in the mirrors. We have seen games for Infernals for Fiend versus Fiend. We're on Secluded Grove. This is still a map you want to pick because the central area is so dominant. And because the paths that come into the natural actually make aggressive options decent, right? You can come in from here or you can come in from here, and that means that this wide area, right, probably aligned with your command post, has to be buffeted against, has to be defended against, right? Until that area is defended, it gets a bit dodgy and a bit difficult, but once both players are on 2 bases, you just understand that this is going to be a game of harassing the following, right? Once the initial natural attack paths are dealt with, what you're really interested in is how do I attack this base right here, right? Because you just assume that this base is going to be cordoned off and very difficult to deal with. And while you could take Magmadons and wreck this space over here and get rid of it, that is a lot of time that you're not going to have because your opponent should be parking their forces right here anyways. Okay, Vanguard v Vanguard. Because you have access to atlases, you should first and foremost, and Atlases, Vulcans, Lancers, lots of things with AoE, and especially distant AoE, you should be thinking first and foremost about Atlases as where do you want your tanks to be positioned, right? So let's go ahead and take a look at that. There are some places here that in a Vanguard mirror you really want your tanks or your Atlases to be. You probably want access to this high ground ledge because it oversees a Luminite on the low ground and Therium on the high ground. That looks like a good place to attack. You also want to think about having either a defense for or engaging and interacting with this point on the map, something like this. The reason you want to attack this area is that even if your Atlases can't not hit inside of this relatively defended base, we have some things that imply from video. We have some videos publicly that imply that you can destroy trees with your Atlases. If you can wreck through the tree line here and get a lot of damage done and leave this base feeling very exposed and silly. If you can't, then you actually don't want to destroy these trees. You can leave your Atlases or on the outside and then attack with Vulcans or something else, right? Either by drop or, again, if you just want to, wreck the tree line, go in and get some damage done, and then create a choke down here. This will actually become very similar to how mid-games, I suspect for Vanguard v Vanguard, this will look a lot like how mid-games work on maps like Village of Guards in Little War Game. Players will rather take the bases on the side because they represent a difficult to control area. They would rather have this than actually try to control the center. Make no mistake, if you control the center, you're winning, right? You're Charlie Sheen. You're winning in every direction. You're smashing it. The problem is that holding this is going to be quite difficult. You have to defend against drops and harassment that can come, and also, if you can hold this, you're probably telling your opponent they don't have control of this area or control of this area. So I'm going to go ahead and cut that and say that that's everything that there is to say about Secluded Grove. We're going to go on to the next map. Okay. Let's go ahead and do a swap. And change the map. The next map we're going to talk about is going to be Broken Crown Hinterlands. This is the second most commonly played map, right? And the reason that this is played usually, from what I can tell and what I can discern, is that this map is seen probably due to the efforts of people like Theory, I'm not going to lie to you, because if you go on Liquipedia, you can look at the tournament results, you can look at what people, what the win rate is on certain matchups and in certain interactions, and it looks like Broken Crown Hinterlands has been providing something of a stable game plan or a more stable or understandable game plan for the Vanguard players in the non-mirror matchup. So why is that? Well, the best way to think about it is that this is kind of a combination of the Little War Game adapted versions of King Sejong Station and Cloud Kingdom. So let's get into why that is. You have a super high ground. Whoops. Here we go. Here and here. So on this map, you have a super high ground main that goes down into another high ground natural. Okay. Now, this high ground natural, I would characterize this map first and foremost as maybe not good for Vanguard. So on the power scale, if we were looking at Secluded Grove is like a 12. If you both start with 10, Secluded Grove is like a 12 in favor, and it gets points in favor of Infernals. And Vanguard kind of has a tricky game that they have to play because their opportunities for out multitasking, out harassing, creeping, and just ignoring the Doom push very low. So I would say that they get nerfed to an 8 or even a 7, right? So that's a 12-7. This map I would characterize as Vanguard don't get many advantages, maybe 1 point of advantage, but this drags the Infernals down to something like an 8. This is less comfortable for them. This map is more about the Infernals not having an easy game plan, which is what we're going to get into right now. You have the main that descends into another high ground natural, and the first problem that you have is what third base that you take. If you're an Infernals player, right, do you break the tree line here on 2 base economy with either your Imps or Magmadons and claim this as the third? Or do you say, I don't want this as the third, right? and we'll go down here. Both of these present difficulties, and we'll get into that. If you claim this is the third, you have 2 points that you have to defend with shroud stones and meat farms. You have to defend this point, fair enough, and then you have to defend this point. Now, it's not just a question of defense, and most players seem to choose this, right? But you can also choose to defend this area over here with the benefit of getting access to some creep camps. So let's go ahead and put triangles to indicate what you have to defend here. You might think you only have to defend the following 2 areas, but you don't. You actually still have to defend or at least keep an eye out on the tree line over here. Now this tree line does imply that you want to take this later as a 4th base if you are the Infernals player. But I want to note that that's not actually the biggest problem with the map if you are an Infernals player. The biggest problem with the map is the Cloud Kingdom-like aspect of it. So let's get into that. This is a high ground, right? So we're just going to characterize that high ground. We're going to put yellow in high ground, right? So high ground. Ooh, how did I do that? All right, that's high ground. And then, if you're on the other side, obviously, this is high ground. Here we go. Now, I want to note something that's kind of difficult here. Notice the paths that we have, the causeways that we've generated. Now we're going to put in blue all of the things that are on low ground. Low ground presents a problem because you are opening your army up for attack. I see the points on the corners here. Here, I'll put them in just in case people think that I don't know that they exist, right? Here we go. Notice that basically this area of the map is high ground. You see that? Even the low ground connected area from that possible 3rd base location. Now we're going to go ahead and identify all of the areas that are low ground. And low ground is a problem because it means that you can be harassed, flanked, and more importantly for Infernals, it means that your Doom push might be going to the wrong side. You might be base racing, right? You might be opening yourself up to possible counterattacks. The more attack paths there are, the more that a Doom push doesn't quite do what you want it to do. We have experience seeing this with a lot of Zerg matchups in StarCraft 2, and definitely a lot of experience seeing this in Little War Games. So let's go ahead and use blue, or red, let's use red, to indicate the low ground, right? All of this, now you might think, you know, it's like the line with Mufasa. Everything the light touches is our kingdom. Everything the yellow does not touch is low ground. But I want to stress what the problems are that this creates if you are trying to do a Doom push, if you are trying to make a force that moves out on the map and encourages your opponent to engage with it or they die, right? The more that your opponent has counterattack possibility, the more that Doom push will be a problem. So not only do you have to go into these red zones of low ground, right? And those areas can be attacked from high ground or you can be otherwise taken advantage of, and there's a lot of spots that you have to concern yourself with. Let's note what the attack paths look on this map and why this might be awkward or feel like a more awkward game if you are the Infernals player and you're trying to make a push and commit to a fight. Here are the attack paths. Does the screen show up well on stream? Yeah, okay, mustard yellow. Here are the attack paths. Okay, you can attack up and through here, right? I'm counting this here. I'm counting this as well. You can attack up and through here, or through here. Okay. Obviously, this is mirrored on the other side, just in case you think that I don't realize that. Here we can, right? So you can attack through there. There's also this central area that you can attack through to go into the main or the natural, and you actually care about this causeway a lot, okay? The reason, and here are all of the ways that you could possibly go on the map. And unlike Secluded Grove, these are very possible attack paths, right, for both sides. And the reason that this is a problem is that no matter which angle you take, right, we have 1, 2, you look at the endpoints and then you look at the paths. We have 1, 2, 3 endpoints on both sides, but the paths that you can take through it are 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, and they're very much split across the map. The reason that this is a problem and presents an issue is that this central causeway is actually, because in addition to being on low ground, is filled with little collectible goodies, right? Orbs, creeps. If you own that central area, there's something for you to collect over here as well. Like, look at all of the creeping that you can do in this area, right? Do you see all of this? Notice how the majority of these line up together, but aren't actually themselves consistently on the high ground or the low ground. Right. So you actually want to, as the Infernals player, doom push, but there's no one necessarily canonical path to do it through. Vanguard players still don't have it necessarily easy, in that if whatever bases they make, they want to make sure that they get all of these pickups, right? And we'll see early game scouts doing just that. The reason this is still a boon for Vanguard is that maps like this, and what we saw in Little Wargame was, maps like King Sejong Station, or this kind of setup of a safe natural that is easy to defend from one side but can present problems because of back rocks, back neutral buildings, back trees in this case, right? Those encourage some two-base plays. What we will see on this map is you probably want to get to two bases on this, and then make a play from here. Now, how does this map do that from the Vanguard perspective? Well, let's get a couple of things right. Obviously, you can attack from the trees. If your opponent chooses, as we saw in some games, if your opponent chooses to grab this base before they have gotten rid of the trees, then these two are unconnected with one another. And the problem with this being unconnected with one another is attacking here is actually easier than attacking over here. Okay? Your choice of third base matters, but no matter which one you pick, harassment is actually going to be pretty good. Here are some other examples as to why. Okay? Notice the air distance to ground distance here, right? If those trees aren't here, that's the air distance. This is the ground distance. Big problems. Even if the trees are there, right? It's the same. It's not a big deal. This, however, is either this path or this path, so that we can see that air support, air harassment, airdrops are pretty good here, right? Also, no matter which third base you take, taking the natural seeming fourth base leads you to a lot of defensive problems. And then that combined with what attack path you take makes life. Hey, Iron Ringed, how are you doing? Appreciate you for showing up, man. So why do we see a lot of Vanguard players seemingly choose this map? Well, again, two base plays pretty good because of the high ground. Oh, thank you, man. Yeah, it's going well. We're getting some Stormgate map analysis. Once we're on the second of four maps, once we get to all four of them, then we're going to talk about why Vanguard might be in better shape than it seems publicly, and then we're going to do some replay analysis. So I hope you stick around, man. I'm looking forward to it. If you have any questions or any insights you can provide that don't break your NDA or other concerns, let me know. I do want to hear them. So it's not that Vanguard have a great game plan here, but it is seemingly that two-base play is stronger, and they don't have to fear the two-base counterattack because one, trying to aggressively take a third is difficult on this map. We see that in some of the replays that we're going to cast later. And two, even if you get to the third base, what attack path you take is very up in the air and open. And so Vanguard has an easy time picking apart the map and grabbing pieces of it. And Infernal struggle both on a macroeconomic level and on a military strategy level here. And so I think this is why you see Broken Crown Hinterlands played a lot in that matchup. Like, notice here, 1, 2, 3 of the 5 games played here are on this map, and we even see some of what I was talking about, the difficulties in where you attack, the flank possibilities, the fact that this low ground causeway is just a nightmare to operate inside of, right? We even see that in the Moon versus Mana game, which I have already casted. So that is Broken Crown Hinterlands, but I don't think that's actually Vanguard's best option. Okay, so in order for us to get into what I think is a pretty good option for Vanguard, we're gonna have to change the maps. All right, I'll let you go ahead though with that segue. You can pick which of the two. We can go into Titan's Causeway or we can go into Jagged Maw. Got a preference, Iron Ringed? All right. Let's go into the third map, the one that was played. No, anyone is fine with me. Sounds good, man. So we're going to go into Jagged Maw. Now, Jagged Maw, we've got the game counts over here. There's only been 2 games on Jagged Maw, which is interesting to me because this feels very much like, I believe the map is Antigua Shipyard in StarCraft. Not Antigua Shipyard. That's the one with the corners. There was a map that's very similar to this in the early days of Wings of Liberty. In Little Wargame, we have 2 maps that are a lot like this, Karnak and Stronghold Fabius. And they're both marked by this. One, we're going to talk about this again from the Infernal's perspective. That's how we're going to start. So you take this natural, that feels pretty good, and you're going to, you take this main and you take this natural. Both of these feel pretty good. Now I want to note, you can play this very defensively, or you can play this somewhat fiend aggressively, like we saw in TLO versus Mana Game 2. So the I can defend the world solution is... Now, for anyone who doesn't know what I mean by that, you simply take this part of the base. You see this ramp? All roads don't lead. Oh, whoops. All roads go through this area, right? If you want to attack, it goes through here, through the light forest, all the way down, and around, and through, and you're into your opponent's natural at this point. You know, you can attack up here, you can go here, you can split up here. But if you're worried about this happening to you in reverse, right, and you're the Infernals player, we see a lot of Infernals player being aggressive, and there are certainly things in their kit that reward them for doing so, but we see not a lot of defense coming over here, but I want you to note there are 3 main attack paths. You can get attacked through here, you can get attacked through the light forest, and you can attack through the air. If you are the Infernals player, you could make a wall here, right? And we're going to represent that as, you know, here's your Shroud Stone, right? Here are some of your meat farms that you have to make anyways, and you have a defensive structure. Alternatively, you just move those south a little bit, and then you gain access to an entirely new causeway, which is the rest of the map. The reason you want to do this is, again, Infernals, because of Veil, because of the production cycles, because of the way Animus works, they want to generate one big fight, and they're fine if they trade everything down with their opponent, because Animus will give them an ability to do something in round 2, especially if they have units like Gaunts, in which case trading everything down means everything becomes fiends, and the game becomes extremely lopsided extremely quickly. If you defend these areas, now notice, the only attack paths through to you are over here. That's a bit awkward, right? Up through this way, and then around. You've actually completely negated the close area. And also, an implied benefit of doing this is that you've actually now made it so that all you have to do to get the catapults, which are the most essential feature of this map, the most defining characteristic, most would say, right? The only thing you have to do is just move your forces from here over here. And notice that seeing this area, we saw this in the TLO mana game, having units going for the catapults gives you roughly this amount of vision, right, of what's happening. So you can see most of the attacks that are happening over here on the left-hand side. Seems pretty good. Okay. The reason you want to put your structures like this is that you want to go ahead as the Infernals player, take this as your third base, and once you have captured this as your third base, you have a very easy plan. Take all of the forces from your main and all the forces from your natural, put them in with your third, and have a giant stand-up, knockout, drag-down fight, right? Just fight everyone around this area. This is why I mentioned Stronghold Fabius. This is why I mentioned Karnak. If you don't go by air, you want to have a big dumb fight down the center, and this is what we see in TLO versus Mana if you are Infernals in the non-mirror. If you are Infernals in the mirror, things get a little bit wonky because of the way that your Gaunts work and your Fiends work and Veil works on the other person's side, and really what you care about is this light forest area, so you might delay getting your third base. So the plan for Infernals is pretty average. It's not as good as Secluded Grove, in that once you get to 3 bases here, it's not really guaranteed that you're going to take this 4th base, because while you only have to defend and put Shroud Stones and Meat Farms up this way, right? To defend this cliff. In order to defend this area for this base, you have a whole lot of new considerations. You kind of have to like hold all of this, or just say, I own this and I own this, right? And that gets a little awkward. Your 4-base plan is looking a little suspicious here. And your plan to go take this double base is also a little suspicious because Gaunts seem to be short-range anti-air is not as good as you would like it, and we haven't seen people willingly make too many Shadow Flyers. Now, Vanguard side. Okay. Vanguard, if you're in the non-mirror, pretty good map for you, actually. I'm surprised that we don't have more people playing it, but what you have to do on this map differs from what most people would like to do on this map, or what most people think the right thing to do is on maps in general. So it looks like Pal World is doing fantastically, but it looks like Monster Ranchers, so that doesn't surprise me at all. Am I doing well, Iron Ringed? Anything that you wanna comment on or you're worried about? Because we're about to go over the Vanguard perspective on this map. We're about to enter hot take territory. Appreciate you. So we're going to take the bottom side and say that this is the Vanguard player. And we're going to move this a little bit down so that you can see what the matchups are. Yes, yeah, the optional 4th bases are very wonky. So the 3-base plan looks good, but the reason I think that this is just, I say that people have 10 points of, their faction has 10 points, if you will, like of that player's skill and then how the map impacts it. I feel like if you are the Infernals player, this map is neutral. You do have a 3-base plan. Your 4th base is kind of wonky. Your 4th and 5th base isn't quite as good as you would like it to be, but you will get to a 3-base economy. Right? It's looking pretty good. It's just the question is, what do you do from there? And the central thrust of the downstream fight over here, usually aided by catapults, that seems your like number 1 plan. Don't know what you do if that doesn't work out successfully or if you just get neatly crushed. The reason I think that that's a problem is now Theorycraft hot take land. So we have not seen any Vanguard win against Infernals in public matches. So you're going to have to bear with me if we're talking about why Vanguard is better on this map than most people think they are. But this goes back into some theories about Vanguard being good with movement speed, Vanguard being good at creeping, like the way that their units move are on average faster with less cost, even though, yes, Fiends are good, Bob overcharge, things of this nature. So, we're going to look at Vanguard bases. Here's your first base, obviously. This is what you just start with. Here's your second base, your natural, obviously. Now, I think the problem, and I think it is misaligned with what Vanguard wants to do. That's the way I'm going to phrase this. I think it's misaligned with what Vanguard wants to do to take the natural, the safe, the expected, right? The thing that your RTS instincts are telling you to do is to take this as a 3rd base. Because, we have just learned from StarCraft, from Little Wargame, elsewhere, that obviously you take your natural. And then if there is a 3rd base that is, on high ground first off, and then somewhat nearby, obviously you take that. Now, as Vanguard, you're actually not Infernals, so your stand and deliver game plan isn't very good. And we actually saw this in TLO versus Mana, but so this might seem like I'm picking from a point that was made for me by the game. This attack path is a nightmare if you do this 1-2-3 plan. Your natural can get hit, they can split over here, they can run the units up the ramp. So you actually are opening yourself up to 3 attack paths if you take this expansion path. The expansion path I think you should take, leveraging the skills that you have as a Vanguard player, oh yeah, nuclear take, is the double Luminite. Now, why is this? So, if you are Vanguard and you take the double Luminite, you leverage a couple of things that are very good. One, Bob Overcharge doesn't seem to have a delineation of effect, and it doesn't seem to have a cap. Number 2, it doesn't have a cap on the number of Bobs affected, from what we can see. So what I mean by that is, the big blue aura goes up, and all of your Bobs are overcharged, And there's not a line where if you go past that line, your bobs lose their overcharge. And there's not a count of how many bobs can be affected by a single overcharge that we can see. And what that means is that if you can put a command post, we'll use here we go, we'll use a house. Okay. If you can put a command post right here, right? If this is your command post, the effective area that that single overcharge will have is your bob overcharge will affect an area of about this. One command post will affect an overcharge this big. And notice this has a lot of supplemental benefits if you're Vanguard, right? You know this light forest that you can get attacked through? The only point that you have to defend, yeah, of a fire truck or school bus's turning signal. I thought of a house, but yeah, we're turning the perspective around, right? So there's what the turn signal represents. So I just use triangle for shroud stones or defensive structures, right? Yes, yes. So you know that light forest? Now what's easier, walling all of this off so that you have access to these three bases and then you still have to figure out what to do here and here, right? What's easier, that or I'm not deliberately overdrawing the triangle here, although I could do that to make a point. Just notice how much map surface area there is for you to cover. You defend this. Now look at what your area of control is. Da 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 da. Oh, to be a Vanguard player. Da 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 da. And you might be like, wait, there's no way that I control all of this. What can stop you from controlling all of this? The only ground path is through this area, this triangle. That's it. Okay. So Bob overcharge plus the triangle right there means that you're actually going to be very, very well defended if you take those four bases in the non-mirror, right? And the reason that this matters as well, and we don't want to just take the faster third, is because Vanguard has so many things that buff movement speed, we want to race around and grab creeps, and that's what this map is amazing for, is grabbing creeps, because we all know, you know, the creep that everybody cares about. Like, yeah, we see this creep here, right? We're gonna use blue or green. Green? Nah. Blue? Yeah. So here's the creep here. Here's the very valuable creeps over here, but there's also some over here and some over here. If your units are faster because they get bonus movement speed by attacking, they get bonus movement speed when they're struck, you can use medtechs to heal them up in an AoE circle. You have scouts that are very fast, not as fast as fiends, but don't die and are biological and mechanical. Then if you just have these four areas, right? Here are if you control all of this, here are the defensive areas you have to worry about, right? You have to worry about this triangle area up here. And then for a while, you have to worry about defending this and this. But you don't really have to worry about defending it. If you're creeping, you are moving your army out aggressively on the map, right? If this is your army, if you've got this defended, you've got your forces standing here, so the light path isn't a concern. Your army is attacking this creep. It's attacking this creep. You know, it's going over here to deal with this. You see how your army is just moving? Now notice, all of these movement paths conveniently block all of the attack paths. And then if we ever want a fifth base, we can take the fifth base here, right? Also, this capture area, taking this base, this double, also helps you against air attacks, because your main is now being somewhat, any air attacks into your main are being somewhat stunted, right? Like a magnet by this, okay? So it requires a bit of a difference in thought. You kind of have to if you think of this as your third, but it's your third and fourth at the same time, yes, you are missing access to, I know why most people don't take this. You're missing your third Therium, but I would submit to you that in a game with creeping, you should be aggressively posturing your army to get the benefits of creeping, in addition to the map control that having faster units already provides you. And with a single point of area to defend right here, I think that this looks really good. We're going to very quickly go into the Vanguard mirror, because right now it looks like Fiends dominate the mirror for Infernals. It's not that there's nothing else to say, but it's that in order to win a mirror in which people have figured out the strongest things, your positioning and how you buff those through things like Doombringers and Harbingers, and how many gaunts you have, and what's the concave, the tactics matter a bit more, right? A bit more than the strategy. But one of the reasons I would hate to play this map as Vanguard v Vanguard is very simple. Vanguard have atlases. Now, you will think this is entirely reductive. I've seen this in Little Wargame. We will get there. Trust me on this. Okay? It might not happen now. It might happen in 6 months. But it might happen in the beta. It might happen in 6 months. But we will get to this point if this map stays in the pool. If you're Vanguard in a mirror, this map looks like a nightmare because you have atlases, and atlases wreck bob lines. Even they ignore your overcharge. They don't care, right? And they can do passive damage over time. And you think you can dodge all those hits, and I come from a game where we have catapults that basically are the atlases. You cannot. And so what matters most is high ground. What matters most is making sure that your stuff can't get wrecked from the high ground. So here are the points of contention. Since you're both Vanguard, I'll just use the top perspective, right? Let's go ahead and drag this up. You want to defend the areas where you can get bombarded. So Vanguard v Vanguard, where can you just get completely wrecked by drops? Well, this is on the low ground. This is a no-no. We don't take this. Like, you see how this area overlooks the double? Let's change. Come on. You see how this area, can I pick a better color? Hello, color, my old friend. Okay, cool. You see how this is high ground and it looks over top of this double base? This is a drop location. Do you see how this point of Therium overlooks the Luminite on the side? This is a drop point of harassment. So you actually thus don't want to take, for any reason, this base on the mid ground. Your path in Vanguard v Vanguard looks like this. All right, canonically, you take this, you make sure you defend this area, right? Stop the drops. You take this, and then when you're taking this, you have a big dumb fight with your catapults over this area. And the entire later portion of the game is determined by who takes more damage or defends properly against atlases. Okay? And so that means that the path for this map on Vanguard v Vanguard is gonna go to time. Right? It's kind of a long one. You've basically split the map in half, right? Here, let me get a giant purple, sure. You basically split the map in half, and whoever's defense is a little weaker, or who has to redirect more forces because of the chinks in the proverbial army's armor, there's got to be a snazzier way of saying that, loses. So I would not sign up for this on Vanguard v Vanguard unless I just wanted to show my opponent that I was better than them. We did see Azure versus Mixu Game 3 end with the Medtechs and the Exos just running up through this point and getting in and killing everything. But I want to note that that is more a fact that because Fiends seem to drastically reduce, currently they seem to reduce the possibilities of how you can play Infernal v Infernal. Vanguard seems to have more nuance, more spread, right? You can play a mechanical, you can play biological, right? Do you go for a lot of scouts? Are you more of like a Lancer Exo person? Are you an Exo Medtech person? Are you are you a Vulcan kind of person? Like, do you have Vulcans, like Vulcan Atlas for the pure mech? You know, there's a lot of decisions that you can make here. We're going to see more nuance. This is a very, theory crafting map for Vanguard v Vanguard. Definitely would take this map for Vanguard v Infernals. All right, cool. Anything else? Anything I missed? You think? Anything you want to have covered, Iron? Pretty sure that I got it. All right, we're going to go to the last one. Okay? We're going to go to the last one. Just applying to jobs. Nice. Good luck with your job search, by the way. What field? I'm curious. As we go to the map that nobody is playing currently. IT project management? Nice. Worked in IT since I was 21, 22. That sounds like a lot, and then I realized it's only like 10 or 12 years. It's not a big deal. So, we're going to go to the last map. Let's get over here. It's cool, but it's a lot of white-collar BS. Yes. Yes, it is. But that said, even though it can be... Although it can be BS, there's a reason people get into it, right? Pay is good. Pay is good. It's not physically taxing for the most part. A lot of the stress is self-imposed. Those places kind of know the value of who they're hiring, and so they understand there's not... you're not just a drop in the ocean in the same way. Mental fatigue is a really big deal, though. A lot of people, I think, don't use their money enough when they're in IT management or they're in IT generally. They don't use their finances often enough to just go take a break, take a vacation, get out, do something like that. Now, if you're in a position of high importance, you might only get that ability once a year, right? Once or twice a year at most. But you should still do it. Mental resets are incredibly important. Now we're going to get to Titan's Causeway, right? And I don't know if this is the Titan's Causeway or if the Titans are the cause of why nobody plays this map. We have no games on this map. We're going straight into Mass Theory Land. Now, you have to understand why this is not picked. We can put on two hats, right? One is it's random chance, right? People just didn't pick this. No one picked it for the Super Cup. It just didn't come up that way. You know, it didn't happen. Or we can say, you know, less hatty, people chose not to play on this map. Or we can go to the third possibility. There may have been something wrong, broken, in need of fix on this map. And so while this was presented at DreamHack Atlanta, it was actually not one of the maps available for the Super Cup. But I would propose to you that actually the problem with this map is that it does not look like a StarCraft map. It looks like a Stormgate map. What do I mean by that? Okay. Any faction. Okay. Any faction. Here's your main and your natural. That's pretty good. You know? Here's your main. Surely this is your natural, right? All right. How do you defend this natural? And here's why I say that. First off, this ramp. Come on now. First off, this ramp is maybe not the largest ramp we've seen, but it's somewhat sizable. Second thing is, where do you position so that you can defend that natural? You probably have to put some defenses here and some defenses here. Because if you put them too close, like if you just put your defenses here, then you do absolutely nothing because the attack path right into your main just goes da-da-da-da-da-da, and then you're in a huge amount of pain. Okay? So you could defend here and then take this as your natural, but that's a lot of buildings that you have to place just so that you can go grab this natural. And what's your reward for grabbing this natural? The most confusing third base choice ever. Like, do you now have to move the defenses up this way so that you can take this third base? Okay. Is this the third base? This is a very wonky map. And then add on to that, right? All of these things making it hard to defend. And then what are the valuable things spread across the map that you're going to want? There, let me make sure the light gets it. Yeah? Okay, cool. There, here, and here, and here, and it looks like here, and also there's a pickup here, and then who knows if that's a thing there, and then just look at it. There's like stuff everywhere on this map. Like, everywhere. That's a pickup. No, you just slide over. I mean, maybe this is a pickup, maybe it's not, right? Here's another pickup. And so actually, here's the thing. In general, if you're the losing faction or the weaker player or you don't feel like you're the favored player, I'm surprised we don't see more games of Vanguard v Infernal on this map. Because, first off, we talked about what Infernal players want. They want a map where they can take their forces, marshal them together, run them up one attack path, force you to stand and deliver, and get a bunch of animus generated, get a lot of damage done. Use the fact that the units are dumb and strong and slowly creep forward. They want to creep expansions towards you because the closer they get towards you, the closer that their shroud is to you, the more veil that their units have when they actually attack. There's a lot of pickups on this map. Good for Vanguard. They start with the scout. Good for Vanguard as well because their units are faster. I know that Fiends are faster than Scouts, or that's at least what we've publicly seen, but Fiends die over time if they don't do damage, so they're coming for Bob lines, right? There's a lot of pickups here, and so that's good for Vanguard. And if we look at the Infernal player's perspective, how do they attack? Like, how? This reminds me of like the Winter 1.0. Like, something like this, or do you do this, like, or is it actually more of like one of these? Which expansion are they taking? Like, do I have to attack this and go through the Light Forest? Like, do I attack this and then go through the Light Forest and then we have to come back all the way over here? If I don't have a way to break through the Light Forest and they take that base, do they have to like come through like this and go in? Does that mean that but what if they take the other base? Do they like come out over this way? Do I even go through the center? There's a lot of confusing like attack paths here for Infernals. Like when you are, I want to send all of my units very quickly and go do damage. Knowing where you go is very important for Infernals. A couple of reasons. We talked about Veil, so the faster they get there, the more Veil they have, the more temporary bonus hit points they have. Fiends die slowly over time, so you want to know where you're attacking because otherwise you're literally wasting the hit points of your effective units or their micro potential. They also want to generate a lot of animus, so they want to make sure they're taking a straight up fight against a against a unit fortified position, but not actually a building fortified position, right? They need to know where they're going, and this map looks less like. It genuinely looks, how to say. We see a lot of people in Little Wargame. We have like 11,000 maps or 15. I think we're now up to 15,000 maps in the game, and there are plenty of maps that are made that are melee maps, and they're balanced. You know, they're otherwise. Oh, appreciate you, Iron. Yep. Hope workout works out well for you. We have a lot of people here that we have a lot of things in our faction for Infernals. They want to attack. They need to know where to attack. They need to take an efficient, not even an efficient trade, but a bloody trade. There's no real way to do that. And when going back to the Little Wargame map point, we have a lot of maps that people make and they're properly, they have a map concept and they're properly like spun around and organizationally they're properly rotated. They're symmetrical on both sides, all this good stuff. But I know that people won't play them. And the reason is that they kind of look like this. They look like a mess. They offend the sensibilities of a StarCraft player because this doesn't look like a StarCraft map. It asks too many questions. It demands that you have a build that is too non-meta. It demands that you have a build that is too early game focused, aggressive, tactics focused, right? What this map really requires is that you as a player sit down and study what is my build and how quickly I can get these creeps and remain safe while punishing any greedy expansion attempts. That's a lot of questions to ask players when they're in a beta. So I don't think that the map was actually broken at any time. I don't think that that people were prohibited from playing this map. Now, in DreamHack Atlanta, it's possible that across the games, no one chose this map or they just didn't luck into it, right? But I actually think that when we see that the Super Cup shows that no one has picked this map, we have no games on this map, that to me implies people don't want to play this map. They don't want to ask weird questions about how to play, where to go, what are the attack paths, and what are the situations. If we get bans inside of this game, this is going to be one of the most banned maps. Make no mistake, absolutely the case. All right, cool. So we're going to go ahead and cut it there. I think we've gone over all 4 of the maps. Yeah, we've gone over Secluded Grove, Broken Crown Hinterlands, Titan's Causeway, and Jagged Maw. We went over some of the non-mirror and mirror map perspectives of the map, and some maps that I think are better for Vanguard than what they're currently using, and maps where the game plan is different for Infernals and Vanguards, and why, based on the maps that we've actually seen. So I am going to very quickly cut and then re-engage the stream. And the purpose for doing that is going to be it makes it easier for my limited understanding to cut things for you too. Then we're going to come back and we're going to have a conversation about how is Vanguard actually just underpowered as shit and in desperate need of buffs. And I'm going to have like a ding, 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 nuclear launch detected take. You won't be prepared for it, so stick around.